2021 certainly was not without its challenges, but I think I managed to make the most of it, both in terms of my running goals and the growth of my YouTube channel. So I thought it'd be fun to take a look back at 2021, as well as to take a look at what I have planned for my upcoming season, so far at least, in 2022. I came into 2021 with a major hamstring tear, but after several weeks of intensive rehab, followed by months of strength training working with a personal trainer, I managed to make a full recovery. I'd go on to run close to 3,000 kilometers with about 100,000 meters of elevation gain throughout my 2021 season, while traveling across Canada and halfway around the world to compete in 3 incredible events that I'll talk about here in a minute. My first goal for the year had originally been to join my friend Gary Robbins at the 2021 Barkley Marathons in Tennessee, after this plan having been sidelined for 2020. I was going to be joining him as his crew chief, and I was looking forward to filming that experience to show you all a behind-the-scenes look at what it takes to support a runner in that race. But unfortunately, while that race did move forward in 2021 with American participants, we weren't able to get across the border from here in Canada. Both Audrey and I were then planning on running the Val d'Aran 100-miler in the Spanish Pyrenees in the fall of 2021. That race would have got us an automatic entry into UTMB in the Alps for 2022. But with the uncertainty around international travel in early 2021, we pretty quickly abandoned that plan and instead turned our attention to some races closer to home. So my goal race, and my first race really since 2019, would end up being the Quebec Mega Trail 100-miler here in Canada. Now this race was really special for a few reasons. First of all, it was the first time that Audrey and I were both competing in the same event. And it was also the first time that Audrey's family would get to see her race. She's originally from Quebec, from a small city called Shawinigan near Montreal, so her entire family was able to come out and support us and cheer us on, which was really fun. It was also special for me because of my own familial ties to the province. As most of you probably saw in my film from the race, my ancestors on my dad's side had lived in Quebec for generations before my grandfather moved out west here to British Columbia. So I had a lot of fun retracing my roots there. The race was a huge challenge though, both because of the technical nature of the trails and because of the humidity, but I did manage to finish in 8th overall. And Audrey managed to smash what was her first 100-miler, finishing first female and 14th place overall. The film itself was also an opportunity for us to try out something new where we presented 2 perspectives on the same race, something we'll be doing again here in 2022. Next, I traveled to the nearby province of Saskatchewan to run the Beaver Flat 50K. This was a bit of a tune-up training race for me before my next goal race, but I still managed to do pretty well, finishing in 4th overall. Again, I have a connection to Saskatchewan, with my mom having come from there, so it was nice to reconnect with that side of my Canadian heritage as well. And last, but certainly not least, I traveled to Namibia to run the 7-day, 250-kilometer Namib Desert Race, part of the Racing the Planet 4 Desert Series. This was something I began to think about really only partway through the year when it became evident that I might actually be able to do a bit of international travel. And let's just say that I might have had a bit of pent-up energy when it came to travel and figured I'd go big. This is actually my second stage race, but by far my biggest undertaking in terms of travel and logistics for a race. I also really wanted to raise the bar in terms of production values for the film that I planned on producing about the race. And of course, what I ended up doing was producing an entire series. I'd received such positive feedback from all of you following the release of my film from the Quebec Mega Trail, particularly around some of the other travel aspects that I featured, separate from the race itself. So I thought this would be the perfect chance to double down on this aspect of my storytelling. Because ultimately, that's one of the best things about trail running, for me at least. It's the amazing places it can take you to, places you might not otherwise visit. And that's certainly even more true when it comes to the events put on by Racing the Planet. When I returned from Namibia in early November, it was time to get to work on editing, which honestly I was doing right up until the release of the final episode last week. So that project really was a huge undertaking for me. But I've already seen the benefits in terms of the increase in views, in subscribers, and in advertising revenue. And the feedback from all of you has been incredible. So I'm definitely motivated to continue with this type of approach in the future. Now, I had set a somewhat arbitrary goal for my YouTube channel of reaching 50,000 subscribers by the end of 2021, which, while I was close, I unfortunately didn't quite hit. I'm currently just shy of 42,000 subscribers, which is still a huge increase from the 20,000 or so that I had at the start of the year, and my channel got 2.3 million views in 2021, with a total of more than 370,000 hours of watch time, which is just incredible. So thank you all for that. So now let's talk about 2022, starting with where I'm at in both my recovery and my training. I've been running a moderate amount since the Namib Desert Race, maybe around 40 to 50 kilometers per week, and still working hard at the gym with a personal trainer twice a week. Ski season is coming to an end here in Vancouver, and I'm starting to build back up my mileage for my first race of the season, which is going to be the Georgia Stage Race, again with Racing the Planet in mid-June. To be honest, the country of Georgia had never really been on my radar before I started to consider this race. But the more I see and read about it, the more confident I am that it's going to be another incredible experience. This race will follow a similar format to the Namib Desert Race. We'll be running 250 kilometers over 7 days in 6 stages. Each stage will be around 40 kilometers, with the longest being 80 kilometers. We'll be carrying all of our own gear and food for the entire week, aside from a tent, which will be provided at camp each night. My plan is to head to Georgia about a week early to explore the country, and you can bet that I'll be producing a series of films again from that race. So I'd be curious to hear from all of you what kinds of things you'd like to see in this new series after having watched Racing Namibia. For example, are there any aspects of camp life that you'd like to hear more about? Or perhaps a better look at the women's field? Leave any suggestions that you might have in the comments below. After Georgia, I'll have just a couple of weeks to recover before Audrey and I head down to Colorado to support some friends from Vancouver who will be running the Hard Rock 100. I'll likely be pacing a good chunk of that race like I did back in 2017, and you can see a film on my channel about that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how, if at all, the event has changed since then, and I'll likely bring you some content from that trip as well. But our big trip for the summer will be to the Alps for the month of August. The first thing that Audrey and I have planned is to fast-pack the Tour du Mont Blanc, which is a 106-mile trail that circumnavigates the Mont Blanc Massif. It starts in Chamonix, France, and passes through Italy and Switzerland before finishing back in Chamonix. We'll likely spend 3 nights along the trail in refugios, running about 42 kilometers of the route each day. And yes, we definitely will be filming that entire experience. We're going to then spend a couple of days in Annecy before heading to Italy, where we'll spend a couple of weeks in the Italian Alps in a mountain resort called Cervinia, which sits at about 2,000 meters, just below the Matterhorn in the Aosta Valley. This is the region where Audrey and I both ran back in 2018 during the Tour des Géants. So it's going to be really cool to retrace some sections of that trail with fresh legs while checking out some new sites like the Matterhorn. We'll be working remotely and doing some day trips, all while acclimating for our primary goal, which is to run UTMB later that month back in Chamonix. The Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc is basically the Super Bowl of mountain ultra running. It's been a goal of both of ours for years, and it's finally our chance to toe the line. UTMB follows that exact same route we'll have seen earlier in the month, the TMB around Mont Blanc. And that race really is our A race for the season, and it's going to be one of the biggest races that either of us have ever done. And after that, who knows? I might try to tackle 1 or more events in the fall, or perhaps I'll focus on some unsupported adventures. I've got some other content planned throughout the year, including a bunch of ideas I've been sitting on for instructional style content, but I've also been considering the idea of documenting my training leading up to both Georgia and UTMB in a series of sort of training diaries to give you all a bit more perspective into what goes into training for these kinds of events. So tell me in the comments if this is something that you would be interested in. But I'd also love to hear from you guys about what some of your goals are for the upcoming season. I know not everyone who watches my channel is necessarily a runner, yet alone a competitive one, but are you as excited as I am for some travel in 2022? And thanks to everyone who left a comment on my videos throughout the year. I really do appreciate and I read each and every one. And special thanks as well, of course, to my channel supporters. And if you want to support the channel, just click on the join button from a web browser. So stay tuned because there's lots more to come.